Hello and welcome to a brand new episode and the very special coverage for the second day of the second phase of the parliamentary elections. The daily debate is dedicated tonight for the second day of the second phase of the parliamentary elections in Egypt, as the elections are taking place in 13 different governorates across Egypt, including Cairo, Al-Gharbiyya, Al-Munufiyya, Sharqiyya, Kafr al-Sheikh, Damietta, Suez, Ismailiyya, Port Said, North Sinai, South Sinai, among others, as about 31 million eligible voters are set to be casting their ballots or had the chance to be casting their ballots on the second phase of the parliamentary elections. And we did see on Saturday the participation of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and the high brass of the cabinet, Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli, the ministers of Interior, among others, participated and voted on the first day of the parliamentary elections. Tonight, I am honored to be having with me in the studio to be shedding more light on the second day of the second phase of the parliamentary elections, Mr. Mohamed Dabaa, the political analyst. Thank you very much for being with us tonight.
Thank you so much, Azra. Thank you very much.
We will be starting straight away with a report about what happened, or wrapping up the 2 days of the second phase of the parliamentary elections. So let's see it.
Voters cast their ballots in the second and final day of the second phase of parliamentary elections, as the National Election Authority said it had went in an orderly manner. Earlier on Sunday, polls opened in several electoral districts across Egypt to kick off voting in the second phase of the House of Representative elections. Around 9,468 polling stations opened their doors for voters on Sunday and Saturday from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. local time. The second stage of parliamentary elections has covered 13 governorates, including Cairo, Qalyubiyya, Daqahliyya, Munufiyya, Gharbiyya, Kafr al-Sheikh, Sharqiyya, Damietta, Port Said, Ismailiyya, Suez, North Sinai and South Sinai. Around 31 million Egyptians are eligible to cast their ballots in the second phase. Several high-level officials voted in the second phase of the elections, as President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi cast his ballot on Saturday in the Heliopolis Mustafa Yusri Abu Amira School. Head of the Coptic Orthodox Church, Pope Tawadros II, voted in a polling station in Cairo's Al-Waili neighborhood. Minister of Foreign Affairs Sameh Shukri, Minister of Higher Education and Scientific Research Khaled Abdel Ghaffar, and Minister of Environment Yasmin Fouad cast their ballots. And so did the Minister of Trade and Industry and Minister of Endowments Mohamed Gum'a. Some 2,083 candidates competed for 70 individual seats, while 284 candidates competed under the list system in 2 districts. Egypt ups its security measures nationwide to secure the governorates where the elections are being held, with security forces dispatched on main roads and other areas to ensure the safety of vital facilities. The country's local development ministry also set a central operations room to ensure an orderly operation of the vote. The results of the second stage are set to be announced on November 15th. Earlier this month, the National Election Authority announced the results of the first phase of the elections, with the electoral list led by Mustaqbal Watan Party sweeping the majority of vote. The number of seats allocated for the first stage was 284, with 142 seats for each of the individual and electoral list systems. Some 32 candidates in 4 governorates secured seats under the individual system, with 220 seats set to compete in runoffs later this month.
Welcome back. You're still watching the daily debate and special coverage for the second day of the second phase of the parliamentary elections. As we did see in The past report about 13 governorates witnessed the participation and the voting of the Egyptian citizens, including the capital Cairo, North Sinai, South Sinai, Suez, Ismailia, Port Said, Damietta, Kafr al-Sheikh, Gharbiya, Munufiyya, Sharqiyya, Daqahliya. 13 governorates witnessed the second phase of the parliamentary elections. About 31 million Egyptian voters had the right to be participating and voting in the parliamentary elections. We'll be having more information about the second phase in general with Mr. Mohamed Dabaa. Mr. Mohamed, how did you see and follow the whole voting process on the second phase?
So first of all, good evening for you, good evening to all the viewers of Nile TV. To be quite honest, let's first give a salute to all the people who participated in preparing, organizing and demonstrating one of the, I would say, best organized parliament elections ever, given the context of the circumstances of the COVID-19 pandemic and all the other factors.
Yes.
Salute to the army forces. They are securing the elections in the phase 1 and the phase 2, in the 14th government in the phase 1 and 13th government in phase 2. Also salute to all the judges, the prosecution members, everyone who is in the process of securing organized, fair elections are saluted because of their efforts during these days.
Yes.
I will say that in the phase 2, I don't see a big difference versus phase 1, to be honest, when it comes to number of participants, how the elections are going, how the voters are able to go to do the voting. We saw in the first phase, and this is how I will see we can do some reflections from first phase to the second phase. We saw that the participation at 28.06%. So almost 9 million voters went to the election from the source of 31 million voters in phase 1. And now we are seeing more or less, I would say that we could expect more or less 9 to 10 million voters as well in phase 2 as per the initial signs coming from the voting centers. I will also say that we see a big competition, right? You see in every single governorate in every single district, you can see 30, 40, 50 competitors on 1 or 2 seats, right? And this creates lots of I would say, activity on the ground. This comes by the media activity, this comes by the presence on the ground, this comes by different programs, I would say, the candidates are offering for their voters when they became parliament members, how they would be serving their people in their districts, in their governorate, how they will be doing the supervision on the government, how they will be doing a good job to make the people voting for them.
Yes.
So I would say, if there's one take from the phase 1 that we need to, and phase 2 as well, because now I believe we are done with phase 2 as well, we still have 2 steps to go, right? The re-election phase or the repetition phase for phase 1, which will be on the 26th and 27th of November, or 27th and 28th, and the repetition phase as well for phase 2, which will be later in December, which both will be announced maximum by 14th of December, the full parliament, I would say, elections.
And we can see right now the votes are being counted in different governorates across Egypt, quite possibly Daqahliya and Gharbiya or Qalyubiya. And at the right top corner of the screen, we can see the securing process of and the efforts of the Ministry of Interior for the parliamentary elections in the second phase.
Yes, I didn't forget them by when I said that armed forces and the judges and all the people who are organizing this, but I was waiting this to the end, to be honest. I have a personal experience today. So I'm from Alexandria, so I voted in Alexandria in the phase 1, but today I was in one of the traffic departments in New Cairo. And I was there because I'm doing some personal stuff there, and I saw the police forces and the Ministry of Interior, ladies and gentlemen, are working like an amazing job. I cannot witness, and I cannot even feel that there is a drop in the number of the people that are there serving the Egyptian people.
Yes.
Actually, because of securing the election. So another salute for sure for the Ministry of Interior people, ladies and gentlemen, for sure, because we have also ladies in the Ministry of Interior.
Yes.
So and leaders for sure. So on the other edge, as I'm telling you, in terms of phases, we still have 2 steps to go. The only point that I wanted to urge everyone in the Parliament elections, every candidate who won or he didn't won, or he will go to the repetition phase in end of November or early December, that we need to gather all of these candidates' programs, right? We need to see all of this. Everyone in every district or every government, if you won the elections, if you became the Parliament member representing this district or this governorate, please do take into consideration the losing encounters and get them together and consider them your think tank, right? You have 50, 30, 40, the candidates on every seat are at least, the average is 26 candidates per seat, right?
Yes.
This is a very big number. Get them on the same table, consider them your co-parliament members.
Like
and
a team.
Yes, like a team. And I believe they will be willing, because by the end of the day, being a parliament member is not a goal by itself, right?
Yes.
Being a parliament member, you want to be in the parliament because you want to achieve something via a program that will enable better prosperity for the country, for your governorate, and for your district. So you are achieving this, or via someone else. I believe this is not the big deal. The big deal is how you are going to pass this and make it achievable on the ground.
Yes.
So this is in simple way or simple terms how I see the elections.
Yes, we had a quick comparison between the first phase of the parliamentary elections and today on the second phase. But what about the polls for the Senate? Because we recently had that in Egypt. How do you see the difference between the participating numbers for the Senate elections and the parliamentary elections? And why do you think there's a difference between the participating numbers for both elections, even in a short space of time?
Yeah, I believe people were not, so the numbers in Senate are a little bit less than the number of participation in Senate, a little bit less than the parliament elections. People are used to having the festive of parliament elections, right? They know the candidate, they know what they will do, they understand how the program will work. I want to listen from this, from that, and I want to go and vote for the one that will give me the best value when it comes to the service for the community, the service for the governorate.
Yes.
The Senate is a new concept. I know that there was a Shura council before, right? And people are saying that the Senate is the same as Shura. Yes, in terms of concept, yes. But in terms of the mechanism is different. So it's half elected, half hired. The way of work is different. And I will say the scope of work is a little bit different than before. So people were not, I will say, they still need more, I would say, more educating, changing of mindset to participate in the Senate and give it the same importance of the Parliament.
Yes.
And I believe this responsibility comes to the Senate members themselves, how they will prove that there's a big responsibility on the Senate Council, by the way, which is how they will prove that this council is actually a valuable council, because we had a full Parliament term of 5 years,
yes.
2015-2020, without the Senate, right? And they need to prove that in 2020-2025 there is a value for the Senate plus the Parliament, and I believe there is. And how this will be reflected in the next election, 2025, I believe the Senate elections will have the same, if not more, importance in terms of participation numbers by the voters across the country.
Yes. Generally, how did you see the participating brackets in terms of women and the elderly, more specifically?
As usual, so women and elderly, and I'll start with women, right? We are 50% women in terms of numbers, 70% women in terms of impact, I would say. It's everywhere, not only in the elections, right? You can reflect this on your own home.
Yes.
But the point is, I will say that women are always representing the voice that driving the country to the forward, or forward. They are making the balance of how they will reflect that gender equality is always an important matter when it comes to the Egyptian infrastructure in terms of people or demographics.
Yes.
Women are always the sense of feel, are always representing the sense of feel of responsibility towards the country. And it's always noticeable that you see the women participating in higher numbers than men in Egypt, right? Because they feel, I will say, they are the driver for the men to come and participate. Not only in elections, I'm telling you about every single thing that you can see in the timing. And elderly people also we saw a lot in terms of percentage of participation,
yes,
which is always appreciated, I would say. And because I believe the elderly people see the value of what's happening in the country in terms of the last couple of years, and how they want the next generations to become much better than what they lived in the last 40, 50, 60 years. They want the next terms to be much better for their sons, their grandsons, and their grand-grandsons. That's why they come and vote. They participate heavily, I would say, also in the several types of elections, presidency, parliament members, senate, and every stuff, because they want and they believe that we are on the track to enable better future for the sons, grandsons, and grand-grandsons, inshallah.
Inshallah. Speaking about fighting the coronavirus pandemic during the parliamentary elections, during the Senate elections, first of all, how did you see the precautionary measures that were taken in Alexandria, for example, because you were there in the first phase casting your ballot? How did you see today in dealing with the Ministry of Interior facilities? How did you see the precautionary measures taken and the social distancing procedures that were taken during the second phase of the parliamentary elections in specific?
I'll be very honest. I would say this very honest.
Yes.
We all have responsibility towards fighting this pandemic, right? And this was said several times. So in terms of measures that have been taken in the casting of ballot centers or the voting centers, the precautionary measures are amazing, right? You can see free masks distribution. You can see signs on the floor. You can see no touching signs. You can see sanitized bin even in the voting centers. So I would say the measures or the activities that have been taken by the Ministry of Interior and as well everyone who's organizing
but
the
we
elections,
need to apply them.
We need to apply them because unfortunately, I'll be very clear, we don't have the culture of responsible reaction still.
Yes.
And I would say this, unfortunately, in the majority of the casting or in the voting centers, there is no commitment towards the guidelines of the COVID-19. And if there is no individual commitment towards the COVID-19 precautionary measures, nothing can happen. Because you can do everything. You can do signs on the ground, sanitizing pen, sanitizers everywhere, free mask distributions. Everyone is happy. But if the individuals are not taking this seriously, you can see the mask here, you can see the mask here, and you can see the mask, no mask, and they're taking the mask somewhere else. So the point is, what I wanted to ensure in what I'm saying, that we need to emphasize that COVID is still there. We still have COVID with us, right? You saw my mask, so I sanitize everything when I come. Because we need to take care, because it's not a fake or a small thing. Unfortunately, we saw lots of fatalities because of COVID. We saw lots of cases because of that. And we are now in the increasing trend of the phase 2 of COVID-19. So I urge every Egyptian, men and women, please take this seriously. If not for you, for the people around you. If not for the people around you, for your country.
Speaking about the political level or the social responsibility level, why is it important to be choosing carefully your representative at the parliament, specifically that he will be representing your municipality or vicinity for the upcoming 4 or 5 years, not just, as you said at the beginning, a festival for the Egyptians that they are used to?
So he or she, let me try to ensure that we are having also gender equality discussions in what they're saying. So you spot on. There is a huge importance in when we select the person, he or she, that will represent us. We don't go behind the political money, right? Or the political misleading, I would say, discussions or phrases or whatever needs to bias you towards a wrong direction. You need to make sure that you value your vote. The vote is very valuable, by the way. Every vote I would say this because if we reflect also from the American elections, right?
Yes.
Every vote counts, really. Every vote. Your vote is very important and it's very valuable. Aside of all what we believe in, that you will be responsible of this towards you in front of your God, you'll be responsible of this in front of your country, in front of your children even. You need to choose very carefully when you do the choice in the repetition or in the replay version of the elections upcoming, that you choose someone, he or she, that will represent your municipality, your district, your governorate in a way that you believe that it will enable better future for your place. The parliament members are having a specific scope of work by governing the government, right? So by protecting I will say the governance or the stewardship of the government, by adding more value to on the ground for their people and their municipalities and governorate, by building on the potential momentum of the country, of the economic development and the political development that is there in the country, by enabling this and directing it toward also governorate and districts, right? If there is an economic momentum of investment in Egypt, and now there is a big direction by the President Fattah al-Sisi and the whole cabinet of how we can create potential investment spots, manufacturing spots. Why not I get this manufacturing spot in my governorate? And if every parliament member thought this way, you will see in every government, in every
all over Egypt, not just in Cairo and Alexandria.
Yes, exactly. You'll see everywhere these investment spots. So what I wanted to say is that you need to choose carefully, and you need to choose and believe that your vote really counts.
To be choosing carefully, you need awareness. As you said, there's a change of concept for the Egyptians now, quite possibly over the upcoming 4 or 5 years towards the Senate Council elections, for example. Speaking of the parliamentary elections, do you think that there is more awareness now by the Egyptians that we do know that we need someone who would be giving us legislations, new laws for the benefit and the sake of us and our children, and not just someone who would give me goods and services right now today?
Yes, and this is a very important point as well. There is a lot of people that having the concept of, oh, parliament elections,
yes,
should I get a voucher from Carrefour or a bag of oil and sugar? You need to make sure that it's not like that. It's
yes,
like it's the vote that will really enable the legislation of the new laws that will enable the best for the country, the governing of the government. And as you were saying, by increasing the number of election seasons, I would say, the awareness will increase. And this is another recommendation that we did, that I believe we now started in Egypt, but we need to focus on more, of how we can enable in the schools. So early on, the early generations, from very, very early beginning.
Like education.
Yes, like education. How we can educate them the basics of politics in terms of participation. What's your rights? How you can participate in the elections? What are your duties? Because it's, so you can say that the
like a give and take.
Election, it's a give and take. If you participate, it's your right, but it's also your duty, because when you do this, you will take by the new one that you elected, the service that you want, and so on. So this needs to be coming via the education. Also, what I'm saying that there are some initiatives now in some of the schools, but on a higher level, I would say in the high school, maybe in the mid school, and for sure there is a lot in the universities of the models, right? So when they do models of other senates or other parliaments inside Egypt or outside Egypt, when they do a reflection mirror on the children and the students of how they can act like Senate members or parliament members, and how they will be doing this in the parliament, right? So all of this is enabling better, I would say, awareness of how they can participate, not only by voting, even more, if you want to maximize or increase the base that wants to candidate themselves, him or her, they will be able to do so by awareness, as you're saying, how they can increase the awareness from the beginning.
How do you see the calls coming from outside of Egypt for the citizens to be boycotting the whole elections, and on the other hand, in the first phase and on the first and today on the second day of the second phase of the parliamentary elections, the response by the Egyptian citizens to be going, voting and participating despite those external calls?
External cause will always come, right? Boycotting the elections was the outsiders, I would say, evil powers, as President Flassi is saying. Evil powers are always saying boycott. Whatever you do, boycott. So you boycott the parliament elections, you boycott the presidential elections, the Senate elections, you boycott the country, you boycott sending money back to Egypt because you are doing your good job outside of Egypt, sending money to us because we will use it better. Boycotting, so it's like boycotting everything. And unfortunately, I would say it's desperate. It's a desperate call, desperate invitation. Boycott the election because they will not be the one that will present to you. Fine, and then what? I will boycott, and then what? Let me go with the scenario.
Yes.
Then what? Then unfortunately, someone will win because not 100% will do the boycotting. And I didn't give my vote, so my valuable vote is not there. I didn't express my interest in terms of what I should do and who should be representing me. At least if I do the voting for someone who lost, at least I will feel that I did my duty towards my country. If I did my voting for someone who won, I will also feel the same, but now I will see how this will be doing in the next 5 years of parliament, and if he deserves or she deserves re-election or not. So there is, I believe the main concept, if you see something that is that wants development, or a development area, or a negative area that you want to change, or you want to fix, or you want to advance, the best way is to go by yourself and try to do better in this area. And to be quite honest, we still have lots of development areas in the country, right?
Yes.
Despite all what we did in terms of development, trying to putting Egypt back on the right track, economically, politically, and socially, we still have a huge way to go, right? And the huge way to go means that we have lots of deficiencies that we want to fix, we want to develop, and we want to advance. How this will be done? By boycotting? No. This will be done by participating, and not only participating, by actively participating, everyone in his area, to making sure that we are moving on the right track. So this is one. Two, as you are saying, the big answer is no, we will not boycott, we will go, we will participate, and this was very clear evidence by the election participating numbers and participating figures.
On the ground, representatives from the foreign media outlets, the human rights officials and the international observers are here in Egypt to be observing the second phase of the parliamentary elections. How do you see this step in terms of transparency for the whole world to see, and how do you see the reactions of those observers and officials?
So I would say this is one of the best enablers of the elections this year, as every year. But this year we saw that the evidence coming from the global media coverage, as well from the human rights organizations, that the elections was running very smoothly, very, I would say, fairly, except of very minor still. We have very minor, I would say, points here and there in different governorates. But in general, these negative small points are not affecting any results in any of any voting center. And I just saw, before I came to the episode, I just saw a report on I believe Al-Ghad TV, if I'm not mistaken, talking about the heavy voting participation percentage in Egypt, and they were as the screen now is getting the counting. The screen of Al-Ghad was getting the lines of voting people or voting participants were going to vote and heavily participating in the elections, with very minor outtakes here and there in terms of negative activities, in terms of people who are doing the media for certain candidates in front of the centers, which is, I will say, very normal when it comes to parliament elections. Yes, they are not right. Yes, they are breaking some rules, but they are pretty normal when it comes to very tense elections. And the best way is to have more controlled process, which I believe they have now in several voting centers.
On the other hand, how did you see the efforts of the political parties before the elections, before the second phase and the first phase, more specifically in Cairo, for example? How did you see the efforts of the political parties to be rallying support to be participating and voting for the representatives in the parliamentary elections?
So when you talk about political parties, I believe we have in Egypt more than 105 political parties, right?
Yes.
So I would say there was 5, maybe 7 political parties were working very heavily in Egypt, mainly in Cairo, as you're saying, in terms of rallying, trying to incentivize people by, guys, you need to go and vote, and incentivizing was mainly how they can enable people to go and vote. What is your problem to vote? The place is very far from me. Okay, fine, we can arrange the transportation. Whatever you will do in voting, we wish that you will vote for us, but if you didn't, I will wait you. I will drive you there back and forth. So I believe that there was lots of efforts by 7, 5, maybe I would say maximum 10 parties. I'm trying to count when I'm talking now. But unfortunately, we still have a big gap for 90 plus political parties, right? So I will say that we still need to have lots of efforts when it comes to, when you are a political party, you need to make sure that you are really a political party, that representing the people of this party, or you need to merge. And I believe this was an invitation from President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi before, that we don't need to have 105 political parties on the ground and nothing actualized. It's very fine to have 10, 20 political party only, and then we have a very real activity on the ground. But for the let's say 10 political parties who were already working on the ground, I believe they did a great job when it comes to first of all branding their names, and there are a lot, right? Mustab al-Watan, which is Future of Nation, Hasb al-Wafd, you have Shab al-Gumhuri, you have a lot. I don't want to pick and drop some. So all of the parties that were really working. Also there is the Tansiyat al-Shabab al-Siyasiyin, so Shabab al-Ahzab al-Siyasiyin, which is also working in a very high pattern of branding their name. People now know know this party, know that party, and also not only branding but also having some results on the ground, and the results are mainly by serving people or by sharing their programs that we want to achieve in advance to the elections. And the last point on this question is, I believe, and this is also directed to the individuals, not only the parties, right? If you want to be a candidate running for any elections, Senate, Parliament, ever, and any governorate, you should not wait till 2 months before the elections to start doing your activities. And I'm here, I want your votes, I have this amazing program. Okay, you have these amazing programs 2 months before the elections. Where were you before that? So I will say that people who wants to run for Parliament or Senate for 2025, be ready now. You have 5 years of monitoring, learning, and preparing. But please make sure that your readiness plan is visible for the people that you want to represent. Go and try to build your programs, build your plans, engage your district, municipality, or governorate. Try to build your self-reputation on the ground. So once you are running for whatever election process in 2025 Parliament or Senate, you will have the reputation of, yes, this man or this lady were with us for the last 5 years trying to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yes, and we will be having more information about the efforts of the Ministry of Health, as we did speak about the Ministry of Interior, the Armed Forces, in securing the polling stations and the whole process for the second phase of the parliamentary elections over 13 different governorates, including Cairo, Suez, Ismailiyah, North Sinai, South Sinai, among others. We'll be speaking more in the upcoming report, and we'll be having more information about the Ministry of Health, the efforts taken and the efforts that were undertaken by the Ministry of Health to be securing the polling stations and securing the whole process of the parliamentary elections during the fight against the coronavirus pandemic. So let's see it.
In light of adopting preventive and precautionary measures against coronavirus pandemic during the second phase of the House of Representatives election, the Ministry of Health declared a state of emergency in the vicinity of the polling stations. The ministry announced that a total of 1,413 ambulances were deployed outside the polling stations in 13 governorates where the voting is taking place. Thermal imaging cameras have been used at the entrances of the polls to measure the voters' body temperature, so in case a voter, judge or supervisor suffered from one symptom of coronavirus, he or she would be admitted to the nearest hospital for a medical check. The governmental hospitals nationwide have been provided with sufficient medicine PPE, donated blood bags. Egyptians have flocked to polls since 9 a.m. to vote in 13 governorates. Voting in the second phase has gone smoothly since the start of the election, as announced by head of the Egyptian National Election Authority, Lashin Ibrahim. The runoff elections for the second phase will be conducted abroad from 5th to 7th of December and locally on 7th and 8th of December. The final results of the House elections to be formally announced by the National Elections Authority on the 14th of November.
Still watching the special coverage from Nile TV International and the daily debate about the second day of the second phase of the parliamentary elections taking place in 13 different governorates, including the capital, Cairo, with Mr. Mohamed Dabaa, the political analyst. We did see information about the efforts of the Ministry of Health in the past report to be safeguarding the whole process of voting and participating by the citizens during the fight against the coronavirus pandemic. Mr. Mohamed Dabaa, first of all, how do you see the efforts of the Ministry of Health overall in the past 6 or 7 months and possibly before that against the coronavirus pandemic, and more specifically to be undertaking those responsibilities of the parliamentary elections, the Senate elections, all those processes being safeguarded by the Ministry of Health in terms of the precautionary measures and the social distancing as well?
So I will say that since COVID-19 hits the country in March 2020, so I believe 8 months ago, there was a huge effort that was done by the Ministry of Health across different aspects, right? Starts from the medical frontline workers when they were responsible for fighting the disease by actually zero knowledge of the virus, like everyone on the globe. And then by the heavily, I will say, pressure on the Ministry of Health's capabilities because of the increased cases during April, May, because by then we were not able to understand how the virus is transmitting. We still globally didn't know what would happen. And then by having a clear plan of how we can fight the virus. This was the transformation point when it comes to Ministry of Health dealing with the virus. I believe this was within May. The overall, I will say, if there is a rating for what was done, I would say we are in a very good position when it comes to the effort that was led by the Ministry of Health and the whole cabinet, to be honest, in Egypt to fight COVID-19. I would say this, I traveled during COVID-19, right? I went outside of the country and came back. And I saw different countries, and I saw the airport, and I saw how COVID is moving here and there. To be quite honest, Egypt, I was very proud that I'm Egyptian. I was very proud of what was happening on the ground in terms of fighting of the COVID-19. Let's talk the aspects one after the other. The first aspect of fighting COVID-19 was how we will be ready by testing kits, right? So testing how to understand the COVID-19. And testing numbers in Egypt is one of the, it's not the highest, but one of the highest quarter or highest 30% globally in terms of testing capabilities. Two, how we can give the right medicine protocol for the COVID-19 cases. And this was a big debate between the Ministry of Health even and the World Health Organization If you remember, there was one of the medicines, should we take this, should not? And there was a lead discussion by the Egyptian Medicine Task Force of how they will enable a better medicine protocol for the cases. And this was very evident in the number of cases that recovered from the COVID-19 in Egypt. Last but not least, I will say there was a big efforts by the Ministry of Health to enable having a certain hospitals as an isolation centers for the COVID-19 cases and preparing this from scratch, right? These hospitals were not prepared for being in such isolated and insulated case for the cases of COVID-19. All of these efforts are coming by every man and woman in the Ministry of Health, also every man and woman who's working in the medical sector. So salute also for everyone in the Ministry of Health. They are really the white army, but we are looking very highly toward them. They are really fighting so I'm coming to the television building, and I'm taking in every step a very high precautionary measures. I'm not imagining, if I'm a doctor, how I will be treating others, and if I came
dealing with the
patients. So salute for everyone in the Ministry of Health. For the elections, back to what we were saying, Ministry of Health's efforts to secure, again, the same context, like the question that we were talking before the report, that there is a lot of precautionary measures applied when it comes to application of the measure in terms of the process, right? There are signs on the ground, there are sanitized beds, there are medical staff in every voting center that is ready to deal with any COVID-19 case. There is a hotline for making sure that there is a connection between all the voting centers in every phase to make sure that there is a preparation of moving of the people if la qadar Allah, someone was getting the virus from the election center. And there is another protocol of how to sanitize, how to deal with a center if there is a COVID-19 case in, like what we saw in the report. So I will say that there was a lots of efforts that was done by the Ministry of Health to ensure that this election process move as smooth as possible. And again, it will all end by us. So if we are not taking this seriously, no matter what ministry, what government, what country will do, the people will be the main responsible factor for preventing the transmission of COVID-19. And another very important point, I'm sorry for that. So imagine Ministry of Health is doing this to fight COVID-19 normally, and doing this to ensure that the elections are moving smoothly, and doing that because with the Ministry of Education for making sure that the education process in the school is moving also very normally. And making, so you can see Ministry of Health as a common factor in every single activity now we are doing in Egypt. So I can imagine, or I can't, but I will say that I can imagine the pressure that they feel every day. And I really salute that because of them, we are, alhamdulillah, in a, I will say, better shape than lots of other nations. I hope that we are not going to worse situation again because of the individual responsibility or responsible acts that they need to take.
Speaking of the outgoing parliament, what were the, in your opinion, the main legislations that were passed in the past 4 or 5 years, the main challenges that were faced during the past 4 or 5 years, and looking to the future, in your opinion, what are the main legislations that will be or should be passed by the upcoming parliament, and the main challenges facing the incoming House of Representatives of the new members?
Yeah, I would say this is another salute that you need to take, right? So to the Parliament of 2015-2020, there was lots of important legislations, I would say, that took place in this Parliament term, right? The first one on my mind is the civil service law. This one was a long-awaited law for the people who are working in the public sector, how the law was enabling a better representation of the people working in the government and in the related subsidiaries, how they enabled better salary management process, how they enabled better pension plan process. So the new civil service law was one of the most important legislations that was done in the last parliament. Another very important efforts that was done, and very important, I would say, also achievement of the last parliament, how the parliament was able to, because the parliament is one of the most important faces of the country, right? So the parliament was able to enable, along with the Ministry of Finance or the full cabinet and the country in full, a good representation in front of the IMF and in front of the full financial institution globally to enable better funding for the Egyptian, I will say, astonishing development plan for the economy, right? This was done by the parliament, approving several IMF loans in a way that enables better funding for what we are doing in a responsible way. So lots of people are saying, we are always doing funds, we are always taking loans. When are we going to settle all of this? Yes, before that, we were taking loans, and we unfortunately, sometimes we didn't know how to fulfill these loans or the interest fees of these loans. Now, nothing that is being taken by the country is not planned to be finalized in full. It's like you have a generating machine, which is investments in the country. Having the generating machine of investments is enabling the fulfillment of the loans. So back to the parliament, there was lots of effort that was done from legalization standpoint or legislation standpoint when it comes to adding new laws to the overall, I would say, country laws. I will say the biggest challenge that faced the last parliament, and this will be one of the most important tasks for the incoming parliament, is simplification of the law categories that we have in Egypt. We have several laws. I don't believe that we are using 20-25%. I'm not an expert, don't quote me, but from what I read, from what I listen, from what I attend with several with several experts in law, that we have 25 to 30% maximum of utilization of the current law categories. And we have lots of laws that need simplification and needs even elimination in full, right? Because they were legislated in or legalized in an era that needs this type of laws, but now they're not. And you can still see some laws with pennies and fraction of pennies that are not even used today. So what I will say that we need lots of simplification in our law categories to enable better application of law. We have lots of laws that were already discussed in the last parliament that needs to be, I will say, legalized in the next parliament, including the traffic law, which is one of the ambitious plans of how we can monitor and enable safe or safer even traffic in Egypt, right? This started by having this barcode on every single vehicle in the country, having the cameras installed in every single traffic light, and then having the traffic law that will enforce applying the law and the rules of the traffic. Because unfortunately, we have a significant amount of drivers that are driving recklessly. So I would say traffic law, one of the also very important ones. The last but not least, I would say activity that comes to the next parliament will be how to make sure that they are cooperating with the Senate for making sure that the House of Representatives, including the Senate and Parliament, is doing a better job than a single standalone parliament. This is very important, how there will be the synergy between the two institutions, how they will be enabling better representation of the real. Because if you were represented by one parliament member in your municipality or district or governorate, now you are represented by two, one for the parliament, one for the Senate. I, as an Egyptian individual, need to feel the difference. So this is another point.
Of course, yes, we will be hoping for a bigger difference in the incoming House of Representatives and the members that will be elected following the second day of the second phase of the parliamentary elections. Mr. Mohamed Dabaa, the political analyst, thank you very much for being with us tonight on the Daily Debate and the special coverage from Nile TV International for the parliamentary elections.
Thank you. Thank you for all the Nile TV viewers. Thank you so much.
And this brings us to the end of the very special coverage and the Daily Debate from Nile TV International, to be focusing on the second day of the second phase of the parliamentary elections in 13 different governorates all over Egypt. So good luck. Thank you for watching and goodbye.